Harp Chakra, the podcast, bringing you beautiful, healing, magical harp music and talking with the artists that create it. I'm your host, Jay Michaels. Thank you so much for joining us today. Our guest performs around the San Francisco Bay Area as a solo artist, and she performs with various ensembles as well. She is a certified clinical musician, plays the harp at Stanford Hospital. She is certified through the Harp for Healing program, and she mentors students from around the world through that program. She has published several books, including the Harp for Newbies series, and a wonderful musician, a wonderful person. Her name is Verlene Schermer. Hi, Verlene.
Hi, Jay. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being on the program today. It's so nice to have you here. Looking forward to sharing some of your music today in the podcast. But first, I want to ask you how you first came to play the harp.
Well, I started out very young on piano at age 4, violin at age 8, picked up guitar when I was in junior high, and enjoyed playing to accompany my singing voice as a singer-songwriter with guitar and piano. And then I discovered the harp not until I was in my 30s. And I saw someone playing first of all, a pedal harp, which is the orchestral harp. And I sat down and noodled around on it, and I said, oh, this is so nice. So I asked how much the pedal harp costs, and when I found out that how expensive it is, I decided that was not going to work for me. But within probably 6 months from then, I came across someone playing a Celtic harp at I think it was a Dickens fair. It was an outdoor thing, and I went up to her and asked her where she got it, and she gave me some information. And so that started my search for a Celtic harp. And so that was a good 30 years ago that I picked up my first Celtic harp.
Excellent. Were there any particular harp players that influenced you during your early formative harp playing years?
Absolutely. One of the first ones was Kim Robertson. Mm-hmm. And the reason is when I went searching for a harp, I went to a store that had harps, but not the one I wanted. But I picked up a video, and it was Kim Robertson teaching how to arrange on the harp. And so that was kind of a very first influence. She's become a great friend since then, and I even publish her books. But she was a very strong influence. I also had a recording of Andre Wollenweider. I'm saying his name wrong.
That sounds right. No, I'm a big fan of his as well. Yeah,
absolutely. And so his style of playing was a big influence to me as well.
Well, let's listen to some of your playing. We have a song here from the CD Winter Songs called Wishing You Well. Could you describe the song and introduce it for us?
Sure. Absolutely. The song is actually a hidden track on my Wishing You Well CD, which is mostly instrumental music, but this version is the vocal version of the song. And I wrote it when I was visiting with a friend. He was having a difficult time with a job that he had, and I was having a difficult time with something as well. And so we emailed afterwards, and he said, "Wishing you well." And I said, "Wishing you well," right back at him. And we both had much better weeks after that, which was, to me, a magical thing. And then I realized the magic was more in the fact that I wished him a better week, then that made my week better. And likewise, his wish for me was what affected his week. So that was the motivation behind this song.
I love wishing you well. When I see you excel, I can feel my heart swell. I love cheering you on till the night turns to dawn and all fear is gone. Sometimes I feel my wishing could heal the heart that is breaking. I like to pretend my wishing could mend the world in its aching. I love wishing you well, wishing and no, nothing less. Sometimes I feel my wishing could heal the heart that is breaking. I like to pretend my wishing could mend the world in its aching. I love wishing you well, wishing you well. I love wishing you well, wishing you well. And if all my wish can do is bring a smile to you, that smile could ease the hurt in your heart and my heart too. Sometimes I feel my wishing could heal the heart that is breaking. I like to pretend my wishing could mend the world in its aching. I love wishing you well, wishing you well. I love wishing you well, wishing you well.
That is Wishing You Well from today's guest on the podcast, Verlene Schermer. Verlene, you're a healing harp player as well. I'd like to talk to you about your thoughts about the harp as a healing instrument and your application of that.
Yeah. So as you mentioned in the introduction, I play harp at Stanford Hospital, and I play in the rooms for patients. Although, of course, since March, we have not been allowed in. And so I'm waiting for hopefully maybe July or the fall, at least by 2022, to get to be back playing for patients at bedside. And one of the things that is unique about the harp is that when you pluck the strings continue to ring. Each note that you pluck on a string is going to affect all of the other strings that carry the same pitch within its harmonic structure. And so you get a lot more resonance coming out of the instrument compared to a guitar, for instance, which is also a very healing instrument. So there's that aspect of the harp that makes it really appropriate and useful for creating a sonic kind of a space for the patient. You can play very soothing music. You can play uplifting music. And you can also match the mood and play something that's maybe sad and intense in order to kind of meet the patient where they are. And then move into more calming kind of music. And the harp lends itself to this very well.
Do you use set pieces, improvisation, or a combination of both?
It's definitely a combination of both. I use a lot of Celtic music because, for one thing, they stay within the key. It also establishes a nice, a framework for doing some improvisation, playing at different tempos, and stretching things out a bit. And so they lend themselves very well. They're also not quite as familiar as if you play only pop songs. I do play popular music on the harp as well for my patients, and especially if they're very communicative, and I will ask, what would you like to hear? And they'll say, can you play What a Wonderful World? Or can you play Amazing Grace? Or they'll have something in particular that they'd like to hear. But when they are not communicative, if they're not able to speak to me, I'll start with something Celtic that maybe isn't familiar, but has a familiar flavor to it. And that always gives some comfort. So the Celtic music is really useful for that. And occasionally I'll just simply improvise, and especially playing for a person who is at end of life. When I'm called in for the palliative care or by the people in palliative care, and what you're really doing is providing something that's soothing, something that will, um, again, just change the atmosphere in the room, but not be something specific that will make them think about, past experience with that song or something like that. And so in that case, I might just simply play improvisationally using chord progressions, playing in different modes, and just kind of getting a sense by watching the patient how the music is being received.
Let's listen to another example of your music. This is a tune called Because You Choose To. Could you introduce this song?
Absolutely. This one comes directly out of my experiences playing for patients. And I had started to notice that when I went to see a patient over and over again, and there was always someone who was a specific caregiver, someone like a parent, a spouse, a child, a close friend who was always there in the room with the patient, I noticed what a difference it made in their experience of being in the hospital, whatever their condition was. And then, of course, the contrast with going to play for a patient who never had a visitor, didn't seem to have a support system around them. And so what motivated writing the song is I wanted to be able to sing a song for those special caregivers, and couldn't think of one that really said what I wanted to say. So I wrote one. And so this song is from the perspective of the patient singing to their caregiver.
I never chose to be here, lying in this bed. There are many places I'd like to be instead. They tell me I am brave, but I know it's really you. 'Cause you don't have to be here, but you choose to. I have the easy part. I sleep most of the time. You sit beside me now, watching numbers drop and climb. They tell me I am strong, but I know it's really you. 'Cause you don't have to be here, but you choose to. Just come and hold my hand, listen while I cry. Though I'm not the greatest company, I hope you realize I know the price you're paying by staying by my side. And I hope you know that I know what you do. When you don't have to be here, but you choose to. They give me medication to reduce my sense of pain, while you are feeling powerless to make it go away. My friends all wish me well, they should wish the same for you. 'Cause you don't have to be here, but you choose to. Just come and hold my hand, listen while I cry. Though I'm not the greatest company, I hope you realize I know the price you're paying by staying by my side. And I hope you know I'm grateful that you do. You don't have to be here, but you choose to. Now those long sleepless nights are telling on you. Don't forget, as you care for me, take care of yourself too. I know the price you're paying by staying by my side, and I hope you know I love you, and I know you love me too. 'Cause you don't have to be here, but you choose to. No, you don't have to be here, but you choose to.
That is because you choose to, Verlene Schermer. And how nice that is. You really get that connection listening to the music between the player and the listener.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Great. Thanks.
You have a series of books called the Harp Newbie series, which is
Yes.
this is great obviously for beginning harp players. Can you tell us how that started and what that's all about?
Yeah, absolutely. I teach harp. I teach a variety of instruments, but I do teach harp, and found that there wasn't a really good book that really took you from square zero, from the very beginning, in through all the information you need to know to read notes and to play with good harp technique, and even some chord theory and some ear training. And so I was just kind of putting things together using this book there and writing stuff up on my computer to give to my students, and finally decided that, there really needs to be a series of books that would deal with this. It needs to have presenting the material in a lesson book and a tune book that would have more familiar tunes. They're all from public domain, so I didn't have to deal with the copyright issues. But it would be something where after learning the notes, then they go, oh, yeah, I know that song. This is how it goes, and help to reinforce. And then the activity book is similar to piano theory books, where they do a lot of writing in the books. There are also links to videos that they have me showing how to do specific technical things on the harp. And level 1 is just called Harp Newbies. And it takes a student from 0 to now I can read notes in 2 octaves and I can play quarter notes, half notes, all the basic kinds of note values and time signatures. And then in the second book, it's called Not Quite Harp Newbies. And in this book, they move beyond those 2 octaves. They learn more time signatures, and they get more into the 8th notes and 16th notes, and a variety more things like ornaments, how to play grace notes. And then when they move on to the 3rd level, this is called No Longer Harp Newbies. And because when you're in that book, you will feel more like you can play most music that's out there.
When a lot of people start playing, I think one of the most enjoyable things they experience is when the instrument's in tune, even if you don't know how to play yet, you can just touch the strings or plunk things, and it just all sounds so beautiful.
Exactly.
But
yeah.
To get from there to, is there any particular stumbling block or advice you give to beginning harpists and harp players to get from that point of just making pretty sounds to moving into the next level?
Yeah. One of the things that I try to reinforce with my students is the practice routine, and that is to break things down to the smallest parts. And so when something is difficult, like one of the stumbling blocks is being able to coordinate 2 hands together. You might be able to play a melody with your right hand and maybe chords or simple bass line with your left, But then when you put them together, then it feels completely different. And so practicing separate hands is one thing, but putting the two hands together, but don't try to play the whole song. Play just two measures or one phrase or even a snippet until the two hands feel like they're coordinated together. So everything that becomes a stumbling block can be worked through as if you break it down into its smallest parts and focus on that. Use the 10 times rule. Play it 10 times in a row without a mistake, because if you even play it 9 times and then you make a mistake, you have to start all over, count from 1 again. Mm-hmm. And it really builds the muscle memory, and it helps you to internalize what it is that you're working through.
It's good advice. Thanks for sharing it.
Uh-huh.
So in addition to harp, you play a handful of, actually probably a couple of armfuls of different instruments. And
yes.
I think in this next tune, we'll feature some of them. Let me see if I can pronounce this name right. It's Klang Min Varka Bielra?
Close, yeah.
All right.
Klang Min Vakra Bielra.
Right. There we go.
And it's Swedish, and it means ring my beautiful bell.
And can you tell us a little bit about this piece and what you play on it?
Sure, absolutely. It is a Swedish carol. And so I had recorded it for the Harper's Hall video that we did. And a few of us submitted some solo music. And so that was my contribution. And rather than just playing it on harp, I added harp guitar, which is the second instrument that comes in. It'll sound like a guitar, but it'll also sound like a wire-strung harp when I play on the treble strings, and you'll hear some nice deep bass notes that come from the harp guitar. And the next instrument that comes in is the nyckelharpa, which is a Swedish keyed fiddle, and you'll hear the melody being played on that. And then the citra comes in, and the citra is a Swedish zither. And you play this instrument by just strumming a bank of strings that is tuned to one chord, and then you move on to another bank for the next chord, and so on. And finally, the last instrument is called a harpeggi. And the harpeggi is a touch tone instrument where you touch on the string and it makes it sound. It's an electric instrument. And so I played some accompaniment bass patterns on that instrument.
what a wonderful sound! What a wonderful collection of instruments! Boy, that's beautiful, and I love the sound of the nickel arpa. That is,
Yes. I love the sound of the nickel harpa too.
I
It's
think what's so fascinating is you bow, but you don't fret. You're actually pressing
yeah.
buttons, right?
Right. So what the buttons do. So if a person doesn't know what a nickel harpa is, you can see the nickel harpa. In fact, if you go to my YouTube channel, you'll see this song played with the video. So you'll see the nickel harpa played. But it has keys, kind of like a hurdy-gurdy. If you're familiar with hurdy-gurdies,
Right. Yeah.
they have little keys, lever type things that you push up, and it pushes a dowel against the string that you're bowing. So you're bowing a specific string, and then when you push the dowel against it, it sort of frets the instrument. It's kind of like putting your finger on the fretboard.
Mm.
And that's how that works. It also has 12 resonant strings or sympathetic strings, and they're tuned to all 12 different tones from G sharp below middle C up through G above middle C. So when you bow on a string, then all of these sympathetic strings, again, just like the harp, the sympathetic strings that are tuned to the same note, plus any of the sympathetic strings that are tuned to one of the harmonics or that have the note that you're playing as one of its harmonics, will resonate. And so you hear almost a reverb effect on this instrument.
Nice. Well, let's hear another piece of music. This is called The Wild Geese. And I love this tune. Could you introduce it for us?
Absolutely. I love the Wild Geese as well. The interesting thing about it is that most likely the song and the title was about the men who went off to war. It's an Irish piece, very old. And I actually would rather picture wild geese and the birds flying. And so when I play this for patients, sometimes I will set it up with a picture and say, you can imagine that first there's just one goose that flies up there, and then they're starting to be joined by others, and they're flying in formation and then breaking away from formation, flapping their wings and then spreading them out, calling out to each other. And then at the end, they fly off. And it's, I think, a nicer picture than the men going off to war.
Well, we just heard the Wild Geese, Verlene Schermer, from her album Wishing You Well. It has been so nice talking to you today on the podcast, Verlene.
It's been wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, absolutely. We've included links to all your Facebook and YouTube and your website so people can find you, so they can, if they'd like to explore your online courses or get your books or purchase your CDs. So that's all in the show notes of the podcast. So.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thanks for being here and continued success with everything you do.
Thank you. And you as well. And thank you for having this podcast. This is wonderful.
Well, thank you so much. If you have questions, guest suggestions, please email me at openingtheharpchakra@yahoo.com. We've also included links to PayPal and Venmo if you'd like to contribute to the production of this podcast. Please subscribe, please share, please tell your friends. In the coming weeks, we have more beautiful harp music from around the world right here. I'm Jay Michaels. Thank you so much. Peace. Namaste.